record this thing. So welcome to everybody who's shown up to this point. We're just checking with you to see, is there anybody who new to the class? If you are, maybe you could tell us how you found out about it. And
I'm new.
oh, great. Sherry, tell us how you found out about the class and what your thoughts are.
My long time girlfriend recommended me to your organization and group and lifestyle. And because I have just finished cancer, chemo, and I have diabetes. And so she sent me a couple of your books, and so here I am.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. And, you know, for those people who are new to the class, some of the things we say may sound like a foreign language, like it's not what you've learned. But try to keep an open mind, come to at least a couple classes or a few to hear what we have to say. And then you can also go on the website and kind of go back and see a couple of the introductory classes. I have one and Scott has one. We do this for free, so there's no cost. And so we're not policemen, we don't judge. You get to do whatever you want. We're not gonna criticize or belittle anybody for whatever choices they make. We just try to share the science and then you make the decision as to what you feel is appropriate for your life. So again, welcome. And I think there's another person who raised their hand also.
Yes, I'm new tonight. I just this week had my first lifestyle medicine appointment with Scott. I've enjoyed Scott as a PA for a long time and have a lot of faith in him, and he encouraged me to try it. I'm very, very interested. I'm completely new to all of it, and I just want to learn everything I can.
Well, welcome. So happy that you made it. We see you're a new member on Facebook, I believe. You
Yes.
signed up for that. There were
Yes, I did.
four new members in the last day. So that is sort of taking off right now. So that's great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's see, there's a comment in the chat about someone's muted, but I don't know. Okay. There's a hand up. I think that's Nancy, so you can kind of lower your hand or.
Yes, I am trying to get there right now. So.
Yeah, take your time, and you can mute yourself at the same time and unmute later if you have a question.
I'm Ed. Tonight is my first meeting.
Well, welcome, Ed. Tell us how you found out about this. And
I was given a sheet by Dr. John Lundeen, but I have met Scott before when I first got into Oregon Medical Group 3 years ago.
well, that is great. We love it when other providers refer people to these classes and they begin to understand the really importance of the benefits of making healthy lifestyle choices, what you eat, how you move, chemicals you choose, and how you deal with stress. And we try to hit upon those issues as we go through these classes. So again, welcome.
Thanks.
Anybody, man, that's a lot of new people, Scott.
Yeah. And Dr. Lundeen's one of our newer practitioners. And so it's great that he's passing out the flyers.
You should feel like your buttons are busted with pride that you've been able to spread the word, and it's been, spreading throughout your group like that. That's wonderful.
Definitely.
Okay. Does anybody have anything to say as words of encouragement for the new people in the class? Like why some of you, or at least a couple of you, maybe one of you who keeps coming back while you're doing it? It may just be like Netflix, social entertainment. You like to listen to Scott and I banter back and forth.
Well, I keep coming because I learn something new each time. And for you guys that haven't been here, I had colon cancer last year. And so that's gone, but I'm just trying to make healthier decisions. And so I like you guys.
Thank you for sharing that, Velvet. You told us last week you may not be coming because of school and stuff, and you're here again.
Well, I'm caught up. So right now I'm okay. But
You were
I'm taking anatomy and microbiology this term. So it's a lot.
okay. Well,
Wow.
studies first, and when you can make it, we love to see you.
Yeah. Thank you.
By the way, it was fun watching your son doing his solo on, you know, on Facebook. Anyway, we enjoyed it.
So many solos. I can't keep up.
He is. It's amazing.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have anything else? Today, we have a really important topic and we can start now and then you can chime in as time goes on. All you'd have to do is unmute yourself. And so I'm going to kind of make sure everyone is muted, and it looks like everybody is muted. We've kind of reached a stage in Zoom life where people know how to use this now, Scott.
Yeah. Hey, do you want me to show the flyer or the fiber
Yeah,
handout?
why don't you do that?
Since we have some new people.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, so I'll share my screen here. So those are on that have subscribed to the newsletter, probably already have the handout, but here's the class website. And so if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, if you just go on to livelifestylemedicine.com, which is on the flyers, and if you've already found out about the classes, you might already know about the website. If you're not on the subscribe to newsletter, you can click either right here, subscribe to weekly newsletter, or here, either one works. And you just have to put in your email, first and last name, and that's it. But so I put the link to it in the weekly newsletter, but under resources, if you want to get to the handout, you can click on resources if you don't have it yet. And then you'll see here handouts from classes, click on that. And then there's all kinds of different handouts here for the different classes that we do over time. Right here, the PCRM fiber checklist stands for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. So you click that, and you can expand it by, you can look at it here, but you can expand it by download PDF, and you can see it a little bit bigger here. And this is just, it doesn't have every plant food on it with how much fiber it has, but it's just kind of a basic fun handout. And when Charlie talks about the fiber tonight, this will be just good to have. You have this, you don't have to memorize all the how much fibers in different foods. You don't have to memorize it, but because you could refer to this. And one thing it doesn't show here, I noticed on the grains, was the serving. I think it's 1 cup cooked grains would be these different fiber amounts here. So a cup of cooked oatmeal is 4 grams of fiber, so you get 4 points. But anyway, here's all the different ones, and then there's you could fill out your own if you're going to tally it up for yourself. And here's your goals, how much how many points equals how many grams of fiber, basically. But it's just something that's fun if you want to refer to it. So there is that. Stop sharing.
Then you want to show them the archived
Oh, sure.
introduction so they can, again, you go to www.livelifestylemedicine.com and Scott will show you what you punch on next under the archive files.
Let's see here. Back to the home page here. And then so here's the home page again. And then if you go to class archives, you can either just hover over it and go to the, last year's classes, or if you want this year's, you can either click on it hovering, or you could just click on class archives and it'll pull it up. But if you're new to the class, what Charlie and I recommend doing is go to 2022 classes and then just start at the beginning. So if you go back to January 4th, there's my introduction class, and then Charlie's introduction class. And we have a class on meal planning. And then every so often we do an open forum discussion about a accumulation of 2 or 3 different classes. And that's what the open forum means. It's more informal. People just kind of asking questions, giving advice, giving recommendations, kind of going back and forth, which are very helpful too. The other ones are kind of the more formal presentations. And then here in February, we had weight management, some topics, and behavior, and food addiction and behavior change, another open forum. And then a couple classes on diabetes, class on nutritional myths and popular diets, diet wars. So you can kind of start over from the beginning if you're new to the classes, and eventually get caught up, and then keep coming to the live classes if you choose. But the other thing is, if you miss a live class because you're just busy or whatever, you can just go and watch it archived, watch the recording of it. So there's that. And then if you are new to this website, I would recommend you just go onto the homepage and see this welcome to website. I always keep an updated tutorial here. It's about 10 minutes long. And so you can just watch it, and I give a 10-minute tour of what's all available on this website. So if you want to know how to navigate and kind of utilize all the resources that are free all on here, just watch this little tutorial. All right.
All right. So for those of you new, if you're technically challenged, and that's a bit much to use the website, and you need some support and help, you can send us an email that, geez, we need help. Send us your phone number and we can give you a call and talk with you. We don't charge for doing that. We have a med student who likes to support people also. So either the med student or I can contact you and have a little chat to help you, guide you on your way if you need that. All right, any other thoughts from anyone? Okay, so I'm gonna go off to the share screen, and we're gonna start our lecture today. It's called The Magic of Fiber. And fiber is so important. I hope by the time you get done with today, I guess I more than hope, I know that if you're able to watch this and think about it, you're going to have a much better understanding of the importance of why choosing certain foods, particularly whole plant foods, foods that are as they're grown in nature, why eating those foods is really so important for your overall health. So let's go ahead and start with Dr. Neil Bernard. He's at the Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine and one of our mentors and one whose shoulders we stand upon.
Well, the quicker it leaves your body, what is fiber? Fiber
at home. Here is Dr. Neil Barnard, president of the Cancer Project.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. When researchers have looked for parts of the diet that can help us against cancer, prevent it or improve survival, or improve health overall, one of the things we've really keyed in on is fiber. What is fiber? Fiber means plant roughage. And by that I mean it's the part of plants that doesn't get digested right away. And it helps us in many ways. As one thing you know is it helps keep you regular. You hear people say that. All that means is it moves things along. But it doesn't just move food along, it moves carcinogens along. Let's say there was something not too healthy in the food I ate. Well, the quicker it leaves your body, the better off you are. Now, that can mean that if something was going to increase the likelihood of developing colon cancer because it's attacking the cells of your intestinal tract, it's gone. It's gone much faster. That's a good thing. Now, there's another thing, though. Fiber helps remove things that are circulating in your blood. How does that work? Your liver is filtering your bloodstream. Every minute of every day, blood is going through the liver, and the liver is looking for things that don't belong there. It's looking for hormones like estrogen or testosterone. You need some of those, but you don't need a huge excess, so your liver takes them out. It gets rid of cholesterol. It gets rid of medicines and things like that. And what it does is the liver filters the blood, finds a little excess estrogen, pulls it out of the blood, sends it down a little tube called the bile duct, and it ends up in the intestinal tract. And there, this little bit of estrogen goes down, attaches to some fiber that carries it out of the body. Very nice. So if you're thinking, well, a high amount of estrogen in my blood is linked to too much risk of breast cancer, a high fiber diet helps pull it away. One problem: a lot of people don't have much fiber in their diet. Let's say for breakfast I had bacon and eggs. How much fiber is there?
So there's a block on, I'm gonna just check this out a second. Scott, tell me about the block on the
That's just right in
screen.
the center. It's not covering everything, but it's just kind of right in the center. And I don't know if it's the closed caption. The closed caption thing is usually smaller. and lower.
Enable. Okay, it was the closed caption request, so I've
Okay.
granted it, and so now we should be okay.
Yeah, it looks okay now. Now
Okay,
it's just
so
now it's just down at the bottom, which is okay.
thanks a bunch. So
The
let me go
cancer-
back.
One problem: a lot of people don't have estrogen, pulls it out of the blood, sends it down a little tube called the bile duct, and it ends up in the intestinal tract. And there, this little bit of estrogen goes down, attaches to some fiber that carries it out of the body. Very nice. So if you're thinking, well, a high amount of estrogen in my blood is linked to too much risk of breast cancer, a high fiber diet helps pull it away. One problem: a lot of people don't have much fiber in their diet. Let's say for breakfast I had bacon and eggs. How much fiber is there in that? Well, bacon and eggs aren't from plants. They don't have any plant roughage in it. Let's say for lunch I had yogurt and chicken breast. How much fiber is there? None, right? So the liver filters the blood. The little estrogen gets pulled out, goes down the bile duct, ends up in the intestinal tract looking for fiber, looking for fiber. Where is it? There isn't any. It reabsorbs back into the bloodstream. The estrogen goes around, ends up back at the liver. The liver says, what are you doing here? I thought I got rid of you. It pulls it out of the blood again, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract looking for fiber. Where's my fiber? There isn't any. It's absorbed again. That estrogen will do this cycle over and over and over again. It's called enterohepatic circulation. Entero means intestinal tract. Hepatic means liver, like hepatitis. And this works not just for estrogen, but also cholesterol. Cholesterol will go around and around and around until you eat fiber. You hear about oat bran and oat cereals. They will reduce the amount of cholesterol in the blood. That's all they do. It's not rocket science. What they do is they grab that cholesterol that the liver has sent down, and they make sure it cannot get reabsorbed. That's a good thing. Same for testosterone. A man says, I don't want those testosterone excesses that are going to increase my risk of prostate cancer. Fiber is your friend. It puts the lid on it. It helps you to remove those excesses. Now let me walk you through an exercise. I want to help you to see how much fiber there is in the foods you eat. And inside of just a couple minutes, you are going to know how much fiber there is in just about everything in the store without reading the label. Will you do this with me? Okay. Let's take something like a banana. How much fiber is there in a banana? Now, you may not know right offhand, but give me a guess. Give me a guess. Is there 1 gram, 16,000 grams? How much fiber would you say there is in a banana? Anybody? 5, 8, 10, 2? Okay, very good. It's about 2.7 in an average banana. Okay, so not quite 3. How about an apple? Now, an apple's kind of like a banana, so it's not going to be 25. How much fiber would you guess is in an apple? 10, 3, what? About 3.7. So similar to a banana, a little bit more. How about cantaloupe? Now, here's a clue for you. If I take a cup of cantaloupe, it's a little bit more watery, so a little bit less fibrous. So if a banana is 2.7 and an apple's 3.7, what's cantaloupe? Okay, 1 to 2, right, good, about 1.3. So let's say an average fruit, you walk in the store, an average fruit is going to be about 3 grams per fruit. All right, let's take some vegetables. How about if I have a cup of broccoli? Give me a guess. Now, here's a clue. It's maybe broccoli's not quite as watery as a typical fruit, is it? A little more fibrous? So how much fiber would you say is maybe in a cup of broccoli? 6, 7, 8. Okay, about 4.6. So a cup of broccoli, about 4.6. How about carrots? Are they more like broccoli, or is a carrot more like cantaloupe? Well, it's more like broccoli. It's fibrous, right? So how much fiber? About 5? Very good. About 5.2 in a typical cup of carrots. How about iceberg lettuce? Well, it's not 0. It is a plant, okay? But you also know, you're thinking right, it's not huge. It's not like broccoli. So give me a number. 1, 1.5. Okay, perfect. 1.2. All right. So a typical cup of vegetables, we're going to say 4. All right, where am I? Fruit, 3. Vegetables, 4. Very easy, unless it's iceberg lettuce, when we're going to cut that down a little bit. Give me beans now. How about if I have a half cup serving of black beans? How many grams of fiber in that? Now, here's a clue. Beans are not really watery. They're pretty fibrous. So, half cup of black beans? 8, 6, 7. Very good, about 7.5. How about baked beans? Baked beans. 6, 7? Okay, about 6.4. Good. So, a typical half cup serving of beans, about 7. All right, where are we? Fruit, 3. Vegetables, 4. Beans, 7. Now let's go to our grain group. How about pumpernickel bread? Actually, a slice of pumpernickel has about 2 grams, about 2.1. It's less than you'd think. How about white bread? 0? Well, now, it's not going to be 0 because it is from a plant. Now, they've done their best to make sure there's no nutrition in there, but they did leave a little. So let's call it about a half a gram of fiber. Okay? So a typical bit of white bread, maybe up to a gram. A more whole grain bread, maybe about 2. But does that surprise you? Fruit is 3, vegetables are 4, beans are 7. The breads, which we think of as being high fiber, are lower. Okay, so our fiber champions, the bean group at about 7 for a half a cup, and then the vegetables at about 4, fruits at about 3, and if I have a slice of bread, if it's white, maybe a gram, if it's whole grain, about 2, typical cereals about 3. Okay, you walk in the store and you can look on the left, you can look on the right, and you can estimate, even for a packaged food or a canned food, what's inside, and you're going to have a pretty good ballpark of whether it has fiber or not. Okay, extra credit. How much fiber is there in a pork chop?
0.
0? 0? We agree? Well, why?
0.5.
Why? Is it from a plant?
It's from an animal.
It's from an animal. Animals don't have plant roughage, so the answer is 0. How about a cup of milk? 0 because it's from an animal, not a plant. Wait, how about if it's skim milk? How about if it's organic skim milk? Still 0? You're with me? Okay. How about eggs? 0. How about eggplant? Okay, very good. So there's fiber in eggplant. Okay, so I always like things that are easy to remember. Animal products don't have fiber. Plant products do. So what? Does fiber really help? The answer is yes. Let's say I want to knock off a few extra pounds. One of the best things you can do is pump up the fiber intake in your diet. I'm going to give you a number. Every 14 grams of fiber that are part of your regular daily menu, every 14 grams of fiber cuts your calorie intake by about 10%. So let's say a typical person in the United States is eating maybe 12 grams of fiber per day. Add 14, I get 26. I'm going to feel fuller. And even though I think I'm eating the same amount, my calorie intake drops about 10%. So if I go up another 14 from 26 to, where am I now? 40. My calorie intake drops again. I think I'm eating the same amount, but all that fiber fills me up. My calorie intake falls. Something's happening to my scale. I'm losing weight automatically without ever going hungry. Fiber is a good thing. It improves your digestion, it slims your waistline, it reduces cholesterol, and it'll reduce your cancer risk too. That's the power of healthy fiber. Thanks.
So I'm going to stop for a moment, see if we have any questions about fiber, and we've got a lot more videos that we're going to share, so no obligation, but does anybody have any question?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
What about like whole grains, like quinoa or kamut or oat groats? He didn't go into that. I mean, I'm sure I could look it up, but I was just curious.
Yeah, so it would probably have slightly more than, like Well, steel cut oats is the whole oat, so it would be about the same. That would have a bit more fiber than regular, pressed oats where they're like the 5-minute kind. So rather than having about 4 grams in a serving, and a serving is a half a cup uncooked, it probably would have closer to 5 or 6. So again, half a cup of either of those grains, probably anywhere from 4 to 6 is what my guess is. I could be wrong. Someone may do some research on that someday. It's a good question.
Because I think on the handout it said oatmeal was 4, but he didn't say what the serving size is. And I think it's a half for a whole grain. I think it's a half a cup uncooked and which would turn into about a cup cooked because it absorbs
Correct.
all the water. Right?
Yes.
So about 3 to 6, 3 to 5 probably for most a cup of cooked grains would be my guess.
Yeah, Tom. Or Linda.
If you don't, if you're constipated, can you have too much fiber? Is there a point where fiber exacerbates the constipation?
Generally, I've not found that to be the case. I've heard reports that potentially if you don't keep yourself hydrated adequately, that maybe you could get plugged up a bit. It's more if you're eating fiber and you've got a normal intestinal transit time, like you don't have any other medical problems. If you had some medical problem that may cut down on the transit time, I guess it could cause a problem. But I would say that if you're keeping yourself adequately hydrated, you have urine which is light yellow to almost clear, it's probably not going to be much of a problem. The average American is eating 14 grams of fiber a day, 14 or 15 right now. The average that we used to eat back in the 1900s was 60, 80, up to 100. There are populations on the planet that are eating 100, 120 grams, and Paleolithic times, 120 or so grams per day. I personally am eating 60 to 70 grams of fiber every day. I haven't had one bit of problem with constipation. In fact, most of the time people who transition to higher fiber have, the stools are not hard like rabbit pellets. They are soft and easily passed, but large bulk. So I believe it was Burkett who said the populations that have large stools and a lot of bulk, they have small hospitals. And the the populations that have little bulk, little fiber, have larger hospitals.
I just ate 77 grams of fiber yesterday. I was super proud of that. I tracked my food just to see where I was at. Anyways, I go to the bathroom just fine. My camera's off, so you don't see my red face right now, but just wanted to brag about that fiber.
Very good. Congratulations. We're thrilled for you.
Then we usually recommend to people that are new to this, if you're only eating, maybe 15 grams a day, like the average American, you're not going to want to go from 15 to 60 in like a week or two, because you'd probably have a lot of gas and bloating and discomfort. So you just kind of slowly increase your fiber intake. When you're following like Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, just trying to transition from, standard American diet to a whole food plant-based diet, and you're having some, GI distress issues, and you might want to just increase your plant foods more slowly, because if you go too fast, sometimes, you might get some discomfort. But so that, that fiber checklist will, and what Dr. Barnard said there, might help you to, if you're having those issues or you're worried about that, just kind of keep, okay, I'm eating maybe 15 to 20. Okay, maybe next week I'll just add another half cup of beans, or, another serving of vegetables, just kind of slowly increase. So then you're only maybe increasing by 5 to 10 grams of fiber each week until you get up to the higher amounts, like when you're eating more plant-based, that'll just happen automatically. So you don't necessarily have to keep track. It's just if you're having GI issues or you're worried about that, you might just think about going more slowly.
Someone asked how much fiber in mushrooms, and I would say it's less than carrots and less than broccoli. Um,
I
You
just
know,
Googled it. It's
Yeah, and?
0.2 grams per mushroom.
0.2 grams per mushroom. And
Yeah, like a white mushroom.
okay, so, it just depends on how many mushrooms that you choose to eat.
Also, what kind? If it's the right mushrooms, you won't care about anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I like that. So that's one of the things, you don't have to be counting, but we must tell you that because our culture promotes animal products so heavily, we really our deficiency in our diet, I hope you learned by tonight's class, is fiber. It's not protein.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course you may.
Thank you. I was a little confused about the relationship between fiber consumption and the liver removing hormones. Does the liver remove all hormones that pass through? He seemed to be suggesting that somehow the liver knows how much you need and is only taking what you don't need.
Yeah, he was suggesting that, like, when it comes to cholesterol or excess estrogen in your body, the liver can remove that, throw it into the intestine and hope that it gets hooked up with fiber. But if you don't have enough fiber, the liver is going to keep trying to keep a certain level of hormone or cholesterol level and maybe other drugs that it will dump in there.
Okay, so you're saying that the liver doesn't remove all hormones, it
No.
just reacts at a certain level of hormones?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what that is. Scott, you have any thoughts?
Well, just like Dr. Barnard said, it just gets rid of the excess. So the liver knows what's excess and what we need. So it's not going to get rid of the hormones we need. It's just going to get rid of the excess hormone.
Yeah, that's the mystery I can't figure out of the liver
Yeah.
brain.
Oh yeah, no, the body's very smart. It knows what to hold on, all with nutrients. We only absorb what we need. So like it's that way with excess hormones, excess cholesterol. If we have we don't want to, like when we absorb vitamins and minerals and things like that, our body absorbs what it needs and it gets rid of what we don't need. And that's why it's so important to get your nutrients from your food rather than from a supplement, because the supplement kind of floods the body with excesses. And most of the time we can only absorb what we need, but sometimes it can cause imbalances, which is just another, I talk about that in the nutritional myths and other popular diets class, how we want to holistically look at nutrition in a holistic manner. And so you're always going to be better off getting your nutrients, whether it's fiber, vitamins, minerals, carbs, fat, protein. You want to get those things from whole foods rather than from supplements or foods that act more like drugs, like highly processed foods. Those really aren't foods. Those are actually more act in our body more like medications or pharmaceuticals. So just another little lesson there.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Just like the liver can figure it out, how does your toe figure out how to heal a cut?
Well, I understand the mechanism of that. That was news to me, and I thought he was assuming a level of understanding and knowledge that I didn't have.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? All right, let's see. There were a couple more questions. I think we have that. So we're going to go back. The next topic that we're going to be talking about is your microbiome. Your microbiome are the bacteria in your large intestine. And they are so important. And we really didn't know, we didn't talk about microbiome even 5 years ago. In my experience, I hadn't heard about it until sometime in this last 5-year time frame that it's become a major topic of discussion that is bringing us health. So if you don't know about the microbiome, you want to listen to this closely. So here we go.
Recently, it's become apparent that our DNA does not tell the whole story of our individuality, and other factors, environmental factors, play an important role in human health and disease, thanks to two revolutions in biology. First, there was epigenetics, where diet and lifestyle changes have been shown to turn genes on and off. And the second, our unfolding understanding of our microbiome, how changes in our gut flora appear to impact greatly on human biology. Until relatively recently, the colon was viewed as a retention tank for waste, and water absorption was its big biological function. The problem was it was hard to get in there, and we weren't able to grow most of the bugs in a lab. As many as 99% of all microbes fail to grow under standard laboratory conditions, and so how do you study something you can't study? But now we have fancy genetic techniques. It took 13 years to sequence the DNA of the first bacteria ever. These days, the same feat might only take 2 hours. And what we learned is that we can each be thought of as a superorganism, a kind of human microbe hybrid. We have trillions of bacteria living inside us. One commentator went as far as to say we are all bacterias, a provocative way of acknowledging that there are more bacterial cells and genes in our own body than there are human cells and genes, and most of those bacteria live in our gut. All animals and plants appear to establish these symbiotic relationships with microorganisms, and in us, our gut flora can be considered like a forgotten organ. Health-promoting effects of good bacteria include boosting our immune system, improving digestion and absorption. They make vitamins, inhibit the growth of potential pathogens, and keep us from feeling bloated. But should bad bacteria take roost, they can produce carcinogens, putrefy protein in our gut, produce toxins, mess up our bowel function, and cause infections. Researchers are still in the process of figuring out which bacteria are which. There are more than 1,000 different types of bacteria that take up residence in the human colon. Just to give you a sense of the complexity, let me show you a diagram from a typical study of gut flora. This happens to be the largest such study done on the elderly, showing the frailest older folks tend to harbor similar bugs, suggesting further it may be the lousy diet in nursing homes that's causing the shift, which may play a role in ill health as we grow older, as you can clearly see in Figure 4. I mean, duh. Thankfully, not all microbiome diagrams are that complex. Based on studying what comes out of twins, those that eat different habitual diets, and stools from around the world, it has become evident that diet has a dominant role on the bacteria in our colon, and the diet-driven changes in it occur within days to weeks. Change our diet, change our gut flora. The hope of impacting health through diet may be one of the oldest concepts in medicine. However, only in recent years has our understanding of human physiology grown to a point where we can begin to understand how individual dietary components affect specific illnesses through our gut bacteria. Milk fat on that piece of pizza, for example, may complex with bile and feed a bacteria that produces the rotten egg gas hydrogen sulfide, and has experimentally been associated with colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. Fiber, on the other hand, feeds our good bacteria and decreases inflammation in the colon. Choline, found in eggs, seafood, and poultry, as well as carnitine in red meat, can be turned into trimethylamine oxide and contribute to heart disease, and perhaps fatty liver disease. And excess iron may muck with our good bacteria and contribute to inflammation as well. The good news is that specific dietary interventions offer exciting potential for non-toxic, physiologic ways to alter gut microbiology and metabolism to benefit the natural course of many intestinal and systemic disorders.
Okay, so that's the briefest of introductions into the microbiome. Those bacteria in your large colon they, if you populate them with a certain type of bacteria called Prevotella, these are bacteria that thrive on fiber. So if you're eating a diet high in fiber, you're going to promote the growth of these type of bacteria, and they are going to produce butyrate, which is a chemical that causes less inflammation in your body, going to produce 90% of your serotonin of your body is produced in your gut. And so we write for an awful lot of antidepressant, anti-anxiety medicines in our culture, possibly due to this lack of fiber in our diet, so we get lack of serotonin in our body. And so if you're eating the standard American diet, you're populating your microbiome with Bacteroides bacteria, and that we're going to see in the next video. And then after this video, we will stop and ask questions.
The human gut has a diverse collection of microorganisms making up some 1,000 species, with each individual presenting with their own unique collection. But it wasn't known whether this variation is on a continuum or if people cluster into specific classifiable types, until this famous study analyzed the gut flora of people across multiple countries and continents and identified 3 so-called enterotypes. There were people who had lots of Bacteroides in their gut, people who had a predominance of Prevotella species, and people whose stool instead grew out of a lot of Ruminococcus species. Pretty amazing that with so many hundreds of types of bacteria, that people would settle into just one of 3 categories. But they figure our guts are like ecosystems. Just like there's lots of different species of animals on the planet, they aren't randomly distributed. I mean, you don't find dolphins in the desert. In the desert, you find desert species. In the jungle, you find jungle species, because each ecosystem has different selective pressures, like rainfall or temperature. Well, this early research suggests that there are 3 types of colon ecosystems. You can split humanity up into 3 types. People whose guts grow out lots of Bacteroides-type bacteria, those whose guts are better homes for Prevotella group bacteria, and those that foster the growth of Ruminococcus. And if you think it's amazing they were able to boil it down to fit everyone into just one of 3 groups, subsequent research on a much larger sample of people was able to fold Ruminococcus into Bacteroides. So now everyone fits into just one of 2 groups. So now we know, when it comes to gut flora, there are just 2 types of people in the world. Those that grow up mostly Bacteroides, and those that overwhelmingly are home to Prevotella species. The question is why? It didn't seem to matter where you lived, male or female, how old or skinny you are. What matters is what you eat. And this is what's called a heat map. Each column is a different grouping of bacteria, and each row is a food component. Red is like hot, meaning a close correlation between the presence of this particular bacteria and lots of that particular nutrient in the diet. Blue is like cold, meaning you're way off. A reverse correlation, meaning lots of that nutrient is correlated with very low levels of that bacteria in our gut. They looked at over 100 different food components, and a theme started to arise. This column is Bacteroides, and this column is Prevotella. Note how they're kind of opposites. When it comes to things like animal fat, cholesterol, animal protein, Bacteroides is red, and Prevotella is blue. And when it comes to plant components like carbohydrates, Prevotella is red and Bacteroides is blue. Here's a simplified version, clearly showing the components found more in animal foods like protein and fat are associated with Bacteroides, with the Bacteroides enterotype, and those found almost exclusively in plant foods are associated with Prevotella. So no surprise African Americans fell into the Bacteroides enterotype, where most of the native Africans were Prevotella. The reason this may matter is that Bacteroides species are generally associated with increased risk of colon cancer. our second leading cause of cancer death, yet almost unheard of among native Africans. The differences in our gut flora may help explain why Americans appear to have more than 50 times the rate of colon cancer.
So maybe that is a little bit of food for thought. The differences in colon cancer, that might surprise some of you. Any thoughts from anybody? Maybe it's made you speechless, which is okay for a while, because we'll have time after we get done playing a few more videos for questions too. But I hope you have the idea that if you populate, if you're, okay, Tom?
What does Prilosec do to your gut bacteria?
So I don't know exactly how it interferes with your gut bacteria. It decreases the acid in your stomach, so there is a kind of an increased rate of tuberculosis, I believe, and I think there have been some studies that show some increased potentially dementia with it. I'm not sure of that. I don't have the study with me, but I'm vaguely recalling that. But it also can decrease the absorption of vitamin B12, maybe the absorption of some other things. So it's not the healthiest of choices. Scott, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I think you covered what I knew about it, just as far as, if you go more from the standard American diet to a whole food plant-based diet, generally your heartburn will go away, so you won't need the Prilosec anymore, hopefully. But we know that, of course, antibiotics, and there are other medications that affect the gut flora, but for sure antibiotics, because kills the good bacteria as well. So we want to avoid antibiotics unless we really have to take them.
So there's a question from Nancy about what about probiotic foods? And if you're eating plant foods, you get plenty of probiotic. Probiotic is the food that, or the probiotic is the bacteria. If you're eating plants, you are feeding them prebiotic. So there are plenty of bacteria in plants themselves. So if you take, like I do occasionally, a cabbage and chop it up and put some carrots and chop it up and onions and garlic and whatever, and you put it in a jar with a little spice and a bit of salt, and you ferment it, you make kimchi, or you can make sauerkraut with just cabbage. You don't have to add any bacteria. They're already there, and they will grow and ferment the vegetable. So if you're eating plants, you're getting plenty of probiotics. Now, there are studies over the years, the probiotic companies have done a good job of trying to convince the population that this is the best thing to do. Every time you take an antibiotic, you should replace your gut flora with probiotics. But there was a study done in Israel within the last few years where they took 3 groups of people. One where they took a capsule of their stool before they gave them antibiotics to knock out their bacteria in their intestine. And one group, they gave that capsule after they knocked out the bacteria with the antibiotic use. They gave that group their stool back in a capsule, swallowed it, and within a day or so, their microbiome was completely replaced, and they were healthy, and it was great. The second group, they just didn't do anything. They just had them eat their regular foods, and it took them about a week, I believe it was, to regain their bacterial flora. But the people who were given probiotics, that group, it took some of them several weeks, I believe it was, before they recovered their intestinal flora. And the theory was that they replaced bacteria which weren't the kind of bacteria that that person was used to. So it took them longer to kind of replace their bacteria. So probiotics are not the solution to every illness known to mankind. There are certain kids who have C. difficile, or, you know, in a younger population, who probiotics are definitely indicated in certain conditions. But for the regular population, if you're eating whole plant foods, you're getting enough probiotics, and you shouldn't have to supplement.
And just to also add to that, you know, just for the terminology aspect. So we have prebiotic. Prebiotic is the food for the bacteria. And then probiotic, like Charlie said, is the actual bacteria. And then postbiotic, you could even say pre, pro, and post. And postbiotic is basically the chemicals that the probiotics, the bacteria produce, like the butyrate and things like that, which you'll learn more about some of these other things in the subsequent videos. Like the good bacteria actually make this short chain fatty acid butyrate, and that's basically the food for your colon wall cells. So the cells in your colon wall feed on these short chain fatty acids, and it keeps them healthy. And if we are fiber deficient, then we're not getting all that butyrate. We're not feeding our colon wall, and then our colon gets inflamed, and that's where a lot of problems happen with all these different colon problems. Prebiotic is the food, probiotic is the bacteria, postbiotic is the chemical that comes out, basically the good stuff that comes out the other side. But I guess it could be bad stuff too, as you learn. But so that's important. And then what's beautiful about whole plant foods is, as Charlie was mentioning too, is it has everything there. So there's fiber in the plant, which is the prebiotic. There's the bacteria in the food already. That's the probiotic, and it's all there. It's their food right there. So that's why it's good just to be eating lots of whole plant foods. And why, when you put Metamucil, or you put, you know, psyllium husk into your orange juice or something like that, it doesn't have the same benefit, because it's kind of already partially digested. It's more acts in your body more like a medication rather than so fiber from a whole plant food is much better. And studies show over and over that the fiber supplements don't give you the same benefits that the whole food does. And then one other thing I just want to mention too, about, because we were on the topic of probiotics, is that this is an analogy that Dr. Greger has talked about before. I think is really important. So if you take, like, I'm going to give you an analogy. It's if you have a shed out in your backyard, and you put 2 rabbits in the shed, and the rabbits are the probiotic, the bacteria to put in your colon, and you take a probiotic pill and you put some of those good bacteria into your colon, that's like putting, 2 rabbits in the shed. So what happens if you start throwing pork rinds into the shed to feed the rabbits? Well, pretty soon the 2 rabbits will be dead, because they don't eat pork rinds, okay? And so you didn't feed them their food, and so they died. But what happens when you put 2 rabbits, i.e. 2 probiotics and bacteria, into the shed, and you start throwing carrots in there? So you throw tons of carrots in there, pretty soon 2 bunnies become 4 bunnies, become 8 bunnies, become 16 bunnies. So you start to multiply, because you're feeding the bunnies their food, right? And so it doesn't really do any good to take one of the reasons probiotics don't really work is because if you're not going to feed them their food, if you're going to put a probiotic into your gut, into your colon, but then you're going to eat the standard American diet that's deficient in fiber, you're not going to grow out the good bacteria that you put in there, because the ones you didn't give them their food. So it's a good analogy there, I think, too, to kind of help you kind of wrap your mind around probiotics and why you want to get your prebiotics, probiotics, and all that from whole plant foods.
Thanks, Scott. And then someone asks, Karen asks, does adding ground flaxseed to morning oatmeal help? Well, there is fiber, and it is a plant, so it is helpful. It also has omega-3. So yes, a tablespoon of ground flax I put in our groats or oatmeal or kamut or whatever we're eating, or put it on a salad every day. Greger recommends at least a tablespoon once a day. Okay, now getting on, I don't want to confuse you, but the next video is called Prebiotics, Tending Our Inner Garden. Remember, prebiotic is fiber. It's just another name for the food that the probiotic eats. The probiotic, like Scott said and I said, are the bacteria. This video is talking about the food you're feeding your probiotics. So let's take a look at it.
The total surface area of our gut is maybe 3,000 square feet, counting all the little folds, larger than a tennis court. Yet only a single layer of cells separates our inner core from the outer chaos. The primary fuel that keeps this critical cell layer alive is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate, which our good bacteria make from the fiber we eat. We feed the good bacteria in our gut, and they feed us right back. They take the prebiotics we eat like fiber, and in return provide the vital fuel source that feeds the cells that line our colon, a prototypical example of the kind of symbiosis between us and our gut flora. How important are these compounds, our good bacteria derived from fiber? There's a condition known as diversion colitis that frequently develops in segments of the colon or rectum after surgical diversion of the fecal stream, meaning if you skip a segment of the bowel, like with an ileostomy, so that food no longer passes through that section, it becomes inflamed and can start bleeding, breaking down, closing off. How frequently does this happen? Up to 100% of the time. But the inflammation uniformly disappears after you reattach it to the fecal flow. We didn't know what caused it, maybe some kind of bacterial overgrowth or bad bacteria, or was it a nutritional deficiency of the lining of the colon due to the absence of the fiber needed to create the short-chain fatty acids? We didn't know until this study, where they cured the inflammation by bathing the lining in what it so desperately needed. Severe inflammation gone in just a few weeks. We feed the good bacteria in our gut, and they feed us right back. It makes sense that we have good bacteria in our gut that feed us, tries to keep us healthy. They got a pretty good thing going, right? It's warm and moist, and food just keeps magically coming down the pipe. But if we die, they lose out on all that. If we die, they die. So it's in their best evolutionary interest, right, to keep our colon happy. But there are bad bugs too, like cholera that cause diarrhea. They have a different strategy. The sicker they can make us, the more explosive the diarrhea, the better their chances of spreading to other people, into other colons. They don't care if we die, because they don't intend on going down with the ship. So how does the body keep the good bacteria around while getting rid of the bad? Think about it. We have literally trillions of bacteria in our gut, and so our immune system must constantly maintain a balance between tolerance to good bacteria while attacking bad bacteria. If we mess up this fine balance and start attacking harmless bacteria, it could lead to inflammatory bowel disease, where we're in constant red alert attack mode. The mechanisms by which the immune system maintains this critical balance remained largely undefined until now. If you think about it, there's got to be a way for our good bacteria to signal to our immune system that they're the good guys, and that signal is butyrate. Butyrate suppresses the inflammatory reaction, tells our immune system to stand down. So butyrate may behave as a microbial signal to inform our immune system that the relative levels of good bacteria are within the desired range. Right? Butyrate calms the immune system down, saying in effect, all's well, you got the good guys on board, ultimately rendering the intestinal immune system hypo-responsive, meaning kind of accommodating to the beneficial bacteria. But in the absence of the calming effect of butyrate, our immune system is back in full force, attacking the bacteria within our gut, because they're obviously not the right ones, since butyrate levels are so low. So we evolved to have butyrate suppress our immune reaction, So should our good bacteria ever get wiped out and bad bacteria take over, our immune system would be able to sense this and go on a rampage and destroy the invaders and continue rampaging until there are only good bacteria creating butyrate to put the immune system back to sleep. OK, here's the critical piece. Here's why this all matters. What if we don't eat enough fiber? Remember, our good bacteria use fiber to create butyrate. So if we don't eat enough fiber, then we can't make enough butyrate. We could have lots of good bacteria, but if we don't feed them fiber, they can't make butyrate. Sensing such low levels of butyrate, our body mistakenly thinks our gut must be filled with bad bacteria and reacts accordingly. Our body can mistake low fiber intake for having a population of bad bacteria in our gut. Our body doesn't know about processed food. It evolved over millions of years getting massive fiber intake. Even during the Paleolithic period, 100 grams of fiber a day. So on fiber-deficient Western diets, eating our Spam on Wonder Bread, right, when our body detects low butyrate levels in the gut, it doesn't think low fiber. As far as our body's concerned, there's no such thing as low fiber. It thinks bad bacteria. Because for millions of years, low butyrate means bad bacteria. So that's the signal for our body to go on the inflammatory offensive. So that's one reason why fiber can be so anti-inflammatory. One of the reasons fiber intake is critical for optimal health. Not fiber supplements, but whole plant foods. Fiber supplementation with something like Metamucil may not replicate the results seen with a diet naturally high in fiber.
So that was a mouthful, and so we're going to stop now and see if you have any questions about that.
I definitely watched that again on the recording if you didn't get it all, because it's so important. It's really fascinating. I remember the first few times I watched it.
Same with me. It's like I learned, it took me a while to kind of take it all in. But again, I want to emphasize the point. The deficiency in our diet is not protein, it's fiber. And you don't hear that message, or you probably haven't heard that message from your provider, from the articles you read, maybe from the dietitians you've met with. They may mention eating fiber, but they'll spend a lot of emphasis on protein, at least in the old days. Times are changing. So just keep an open mind and follow the science on this. Next, let's see, there's a question. What you put on the food, what I put on the food is a tablespoon of ground flaxseed once a day. It's in Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, and if you watch the introductory lectures by Scott and myself, you'll see that and how to access it. Any other questions? Does that go rancid quickly when ground? Yeah, so if you have ground flaxseed, it's called flax meal, and you should be putting flax meal in the refrigerator. It lasts about a month, according to Dr. Greger, whereas the seeds last for many months. And that's why we buy the seeds and then we grind them in a nut grinder every day. So they're not going to go bad. Keep them in the refrigerator. Buy enough for a month. Okay, now we're going to go on to a little bit more on fiber.
Can I say something about that?
You may.
I've done the flax meal for a while, but I always would not really remember when it had been a month. So I finally started just putting a magic marker, permanent marker next on a container on my fridge, like in a magnet basket, and just writing the date that I open it. Just like I do with jars of pasta, which I hardly have anymore, but things like that. It just helps so much. It seems like an easy thought, but it took me a while to figure it out.
I think that's a good suggestion, marking the packages when you open them up, whatever it is. Tom?
You can skip this question if you want. It's a little morbid and I'm kind of curious. My sister just had cancer and they cut out her entire colon.
Yeah.
And then reattached the small intestine to, and I wondered how drastically that would affect everything in her gut.
Cutting out almost all the colon would cut out the vast majority of your microbiome. So it could significantly influence the inflammation that goes on in your body, like the butyrate that you're able to produce. It would significantly affect the serotonin levels. And so you would have to do a lot of juggling to maintain your health with that. Okay, small coffee grinder. Let's see, what else are we? There was one other question, I think.
About protein, how much protein does somebody need?
Okay, go ahead and you can answer it.
Sure. So it's always a good question that we talked about it in a lot of other classes and whatnot, and there's more detail on that if you want more detail in the nutritional myths and other popular diets class. But basically the recommended dietary allowance is 0.8 grams per kilogram. And so that's your lean body mass and not your actual weight, but what your ideal weight is. So if your body mass index is between, what's normal is between 18.5 and 24 is considered a normal body mass index. So your lean normal body weight, you could just kind of go with, if you do a height and weight chart, you want your BMI to be somewhere between 20, 23, and then just go, okay, that's figure out how many kilograms you are. Then you want 0.8 grams per kilogram is how much protein you need, but it kind of equates to about 50 to 70 grams a day for most people. But what our overall message is as long as you get enough calories, you're going to get enough protein. So you don't need to, just like you don't need to count your grams of fiber, you don't need to count your grams of protein either. Just as long as you're getting enough calories and you're getting some exercise, resistance exercise to maintain your muscle mass, you're going to get enough protein. So that's not a nutrient, again, not a nutrient of concern. If you're an infant, a professional athlete, or you are very, an elderly person like over 80 years old and you're really not eating a lot of volume of food, then you might need a little bit extra protein, maybe up to 1.2 grams per kilogram to 1.5 grams per kilogram. But so maybe an extra 10 to 20 grams a day, maybe you need a little bit more, but again, focusing on eating good, healthy whole plant foods, and as long as you're getting enough calories to maintain your healthy body mass, then you're going to be getting enough protein. But if you want much more detail than that, go back, watch the class on the archives that's called Nutritional Myths and Other Popular Diets, and that will give you a bunch more information on protein.
And someone asked about flax seeds. Should they be, if you can eat them whole? If you eat them whole, they just go right through you and you lose the omega-3 benefits from them. You get fiber benefits, but you lose the omega-3s, which are short chain fatty acids, which you really need in your life. So grind them up or use a mortar and pestle or whatever, however you grind it up, nut grinder or whatever. Let's see. We got the last message. Now we're going to carry on with the next video. This is the fiber theory wrong? So let's see what this has to say.
Fiber-containing foods may not only help prevent heart disease, but help treat it as well. Heart patients who increase their intake of fiber after their first heart attack reduce their risk of a second and live longer than those who don't. But what if we really don't want to have a heart attack in the first place? If 7 grams of fiber gets us a 9% reduced risk, would 77 grams a day drop our risk 99%? Well, that's what they used to eat in Uganda, a country in which coronary heart disease, our #1 killer, was almost non-existent. Heart disease was so rare among those eating these traditional plant-based diets, there were papers published like this. A case of coronary heart disease in an African? After 26 years of medical practice, they finally recorded their first case of coronary heart disease in a judge consuming a partially westernized diet, having fiber-free foods like meat, dairy, and eggs displace some of the plant foods in his diet. Were there so few cases because Africans didn't live very long? No. The overall life expectancy was low because of diseases of childhood, like infections. But when they reach middle age, they had the best survival, thanks in part to our #1 killer being virtually absent. Of course, now diets have westernized across the country, and it gets to now be their #1 killer as well, from virtually non-existent to an epidemic. Some blame this change on too much animal fat. Others blame it on too little fiber, but they both point the same solution, right? A diet centered around unrefined plant foods. In fact, sometimes it's easier to convince patients to improve their diet by eating more of the good foods to kind of crowd out some of the less healthy options. The dietary fiber hypothesis, first proposed in the 70s, zeroed in on fiber as the dietary component that was so protective against chronic disease. And since then, evidence has certainly accumulated. Those who eat lots of fiber appear protected from several chronic conditions. But maybe fiber is just a marker for the consumption of foods as grown, whole, unprocessed plant foods, the only major source of fiber. So maybe all these studies showing fiber is good are really just showing that eating lots of unrefined plant foods are good. Fiber is just one component of plant food, and to neglect all the other components, like all the phytonutrients, may be to seriously limit our understanding. Why did Drs. Burkitt, Terrell, Painter, Walker, the fathers of the fiber theory, place all their bets on fiber? Well, one possible explanation for this is that they were doctors, and we doctors like to think in terms of magic bullets. That's how we're trained, like one pill, one operation. They were clinicians, not nutritionists, and so they developed a reductionist approach. The problem with that approach is that if we reach the wrong conclusion, we may come up with the wrong solution. Burkitt saw disease rates skyrocket after populations went from eating whole plant foods to refined plant and animal foods. But instead of telling people we should go back to eating whole plant foods, he was so convinced fiber was the magic component, his top recommendations was eat whole grain bread, but they never used to eat any kind of bread in Uganda, and sprinkle some spoonfuls of wheat bran onto your food. But studies to this day associating high fiber intake with lower risk of disease and death relate only to fiber from food intake, rather than from fiber isolates or extracts. It's not at all clear whether fiber consumed as a supplement is beneficial. In retrospect, maybe it was a mistake to isolate fiber from the overall field of plant food nutrition. The evidence supporting the value of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, as opposed to only fiber, has proved to be more consistent, much more consistent. Plant whole foods are what's of fundamental importance in our diet. Fiber is just one of the many beneficial components of fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and beans. Much of the effort on defining fiber and studying the fiber isolate would have been better applied to a whole plant food approach. What would have happened if Burkitt and others had instead emphasized the value of plant foods? The value of eating unrefined plant food, which incorporates fiber and phytonutrients, might have been the focus of attention rather than just isolated fiber, which leads people to shop in this aisle for their fiber instead of this aisle.
So the question becomes, which aisle are you going to shop in? And so I want to stop for a moment and see if there are any questions here, to make sure that you are truly understanding the benefits of whole plant foods, and not just the term fiber. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yeah,
Nancy
Tom.
has a question.
Okay, Nancy first and then Tom.
Yeah, I don't mean to be taking up more than my share. I was just curious about, is there, does this equally apply to both soluble and insoluble fiber?
Equally
Yes.
apply? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, so I expected a distinction or just a discussion of the two different types. I
So
mean, I don't know if you're
So
supposed to-
soluble fiber is like oatmeal and it will hook up with cholesterol. So that will be, much better for reducing the excess cholesterol levels and maybe excess estrogen or testosterone levels. Whereas the insoluble is the food for the microbiome.
Okay.
It will
that-
provide more food for your microbiome.
Yeah,
Okay.
think of it as soluble. It kind of gets like jelly-like. It absorbs water and becomes kind of like a jelly-like. And that's like he said, like whole grains and beans have a lot of soluble fiber. And insoluble fiber is like the bulk to the stool and provides the food for the microbiome. But just it's good to kind of understand, I guess, the two types. But all plant foods have a combination of both, and so they're both important, I guess, is the lesson there.
So you don't have to make sure you're getting certain amounts of each.
No,
You don't.
no. Okay, Tom?
I've got a condition that may necessitate me taking an opioid, which causes constipation. And they say, take Metamucil to remedy the constipation. So I'm thinking, eat more fiber instead, but would that be as powerful as Metamucil to overcome the constipation caused by opioids?
I think potentially it could. And you'd be getting more nutrients and vitamins, although you're totally plant-based anyway, correct?
Yes,
You don't eat any animal products at all.
no.
So it may be that adding additional fiber is not going to do it for you, and you may need to do the Metamucil or whatever. It just, that's kind of an experiment you're going to have to do with your own body. Scott, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and then you might have to add a stool softener too. A daily stool softener is safe to take, like Colace, docusate sodium. So sometimes when you're on an opioid, even if you're eating, lots of whole plant foods, high fiber diet, drinking lots of water, and then maybe adding a little Metamucil, then you still might end up having to take the Colace, the docusate to even soften the stool even more to get things moving along. So just because of the side effect of the drugs.
And, exercise may help stimulate the sympathetic system or a little bit more, but I don't know whether that will, I guess it would be parasympathetic that you want to stimulate for having increased intestinal activity. Yes, Megan.
Yeah, hey, sorry, I'm on mute or not showing my video today because I'm cooking, but I wanted to chime in and give a little shout out to DOs. So osteopathic physicians can help with GI motility and all that stuff. So if you find a physician practicing osteopathic medicine, that could be another solution.
So I like that comment. Thank you, Megan, for that. And actually, Tom, you're up in an area where there's a lot of potential DOs. You're in Albany, and the DO school is in Lebanon, so it's close. Do you know what techniques are actually used to stimulate bowels? Is it? I personally am not familiar with that.
So that's second year, that's next year for me, learning wise, but I do know that there are some visceral techniques that are known to help.
Okay, well, we're going to be around in a year. We're looking forward to you sharing that with us.
I will definitely chime in again.
Thank you. Okay,
I have a-
anybody? Yes,
I have a
Dorothy.
question.
Yes, Dorothy.
they say that prunes have a lot of fiber. But one time I ate a package of prunes and I had a lot of gas. Should I just not have eaten all of that?
So how many prunes did you actually eat? Was it 3? Was it 9? Was it 15?
Yeah, maybe like 15 or so.
Yeah, so 15 is an awful lot. I usually have 3, maybe 4, and that
Okay.
is something that I tolerate well. If you want to start with 1 or 2, and then do that over the week or 2 period of time, and then go up to 3 or 4. I do it gradually instead of 15 at a time.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question, because others have similar issues. Any other questions? We're doing a few more questions. I'm going to skip a couple of the videos that I have because we could do that in class in a couple weeks when we're doing a sum up and we have some time perhaps. But I want to make sure, since we have several new people, that we get their questions kind of answered. And we don't want them to attend this meeting and have so many questions that they say, this is impossible, there's no way we could possibly do this, and then not show up again. Okay.
So I just wanted to say that this is my second time watching, joining this group, and I've learned a lot. I get a whole lot out of it.
Well, thank you for that comment. That's why we do this and why we want to, it encourages us to do another class. All right, we don't have any questions right now, so I'll play one more video and then we'll go from there. And it's actually, for those people who are interested in losing a little bit of weight, this is kind of an important one. And so I'm glad that I'm able to share it today. It's called Paleo Poo and what we can learn from fossilized feces.
In the US, we tend to get less than 20 grams of fiber a day, only about half the minimum recommended intake. But in populations where many of our deadliest diseases are practically unknown, rural China, rural Africa, they're eating huge amounts of whole plant foods, up to 100 grams of fiber a day or more, which is what it's estimated our Paleolithic ancestors were getting, based on dietary analyses of modern-day primitive hunter-gatherer tribes, and by analyzing coprolites, human fossilized feces. In other words, paleo poop. These most intimate of ancient human artifacts were often ignored or discarded during many previous archaeological excavations, but careful study of materials painstakingly recovered from human paleofeces says a lot about what ancient human dietary practices were like, given their incredibly high content of fiber, undigested plant remains, strongly suggesting that for over 99% of our existence as a distinct species, our gastrointestinal tract has been exposed to the selective pressures exerted by a fiber-filled diet of whole plant foods. So for millions of years before the first stone tools and evidence of butchering, our ancestors were eating plants. But what kind of plants? One way you can tell if animals are natural folivores or frugivores, meaning leaf eaters or fruit eaters, is to map the area of absorptive mucosa in our gut versus their functional body size. Folivores are those meant to eat mostly foliage, leaves, while frugivores are better designed to eat fruit. The faunivores eat the fauna, another name for carnivore. If you chart animals out this way, they fall along distinct lines. So where do humans land? Here's our functional body size, and here's our absorptive area. So while eating our greens is important, it appears the natural dietary status of the human species is primarily that of a fruit eater. Why does it matter how much fiber we used to eat? Well, one theory for the rising levels of obesity in Western populations is that the body's mechanisms for controlling appetite evolved to match how many plants we used to eat. Our ancestors ate so many plant foods, we were getting like 100 grams of fiber a day. So for millions of years, food equaled fiber. So no surprise, one of the physiological mechanisms our body evolved to suppress our appetite involved this fiber. For example, fiber is metabolized by our gut flora into short-chain fatty acids, which bind to and activate receptors on the surfaces of our cells that alter our metabolism. For example, activating receptors on fat cells to increase the expression of the weight-reducing hormone leptin. Other hormones are affected as well. Since until recently, food meant fiber. An increase in food intake meant an increase in fiber intake, which made our gut bacteria so happy they made lots of short-chain fatty acids, activating the cell surface receptors, releasing a bunch of hormones that make us lose our appetite and downregulate hunger, so we eat less. But if we eat less, there's less fiber in our gut, so less of these hormones are released, which boosts our appetite, we get hungry, and we want to eat. But what if food doesn't equal fiber, like on the standard American diet? Then we keep just getting those signals to eat, eat, eat. We're always hungry. If we haven't eaten our 100 grams of fiber for the day, our body may be like, what, are we starving here? Discovering this mechanism makes the food and pharmaceutical industries very excited. They figure they can now come up with, the new drugs in the fight against the current obesity onslaught, or we could just eat as nature intended.
Okay, with that, we'll see if there are any further questions. I hope that you've learned the importance of whole plant foods, that the fiber issue is truly an important one, along with the other nutrients, and that if you want to focus your attention on getting healthier, you'll drop how much protein that you're getting, and you'll focus more on how much fiber are you able to incorporate into your diet. And again, go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, and not having to count protein, but like the videos or the chart you show throughout lots of different classes, that 500 calories worth of plant food and 500 calories worth of animal food have about the same amount of protein. So you're going to get enough protein whether you're eating plant foods or if you're eating the standard American diet. But we want you to choose more whole plant foods because they have all the other nutrients and health benefits, including fiber.
So I guess I maybe have one quick question on that. So so plant foods, except for a couple, are not complete proteins, right? And so do you have to eat those combinations that eaten together make a complete protein, or can you scatter them out through the day?
You can scatter them out for the day. The combining was a problem that was brought up by one author back in the last century. She wrote a book that said you have to combine beans and rice to get a complete protein. She has since rescinded that. It is not science. And
I see it everywhere.
and you are not You do see it everywhere. You are not alone. It's one of the myths that continues to rear its ugly head in our culture, confusing us, making us think that the only way we can get a complete protein is through eating animal products. This is part of the meat, dairy, egg industry, push for buy our products because they are complete protein. It's a myth.
And all plant foods have all the amino acids. So there's only 2 foods that are incomplete in their amino acids, and they're both animal foods. One is gelatin and the other is egg white, albumin. And so every plant food has all of the amino acids. And so that's one of those myths.
I have never heard that before.
Yeah.
I have literally never heard that before.
Right. So and I mean, you can go to the academics in nutrition and they know this. It's just that's just those myths that are just out in our culture. Everyone focuses so much on protein, which is focusing on the wrong thing. It's just protein is a good marketing tool. It's just protein sells, and it's just been that way for a long time. And so that's why we do these classes, so people can actually hear what the real science is and about protein, about all the other myths, and about you'll get plenty of protein whether you eat whatever you eat. As long as you're getting enough calories, you're always going to get enough, and you don't need to worry about, am I getting all the right kinds of amino acids and things like that. You just eat a wide variety of whole plant foods, and you're going to get every, because they all have, every plant food has all the amino acids that you need, but they have, some foods have more of certain ones and less of certain ones. And so as long as you're eating a wide variety of foods, you're going to get everything you need from a nutrition standpoint.
Okay, thank you. You can tell I am at the beginning of a journey that I guess the rest of you have gone a lot farther.
Oh, you'd be surprised. Yeah, it's great you asked that.
We must tell you, if you watch the introductory lecture, both of us were either skeptical or not really believing that this would make a difference until we, started reading more about the science, and, we did more book reading and, video watching and whatever else we did. It was mainly books. Forks Over Knives was one that convinced us, but many, many books is what we used initially. And now there's many podcasts and many other. The science has just become overwhelming for those who are willing to open their mind and bust the myths that they've been living under and try something different. And I must tell you, if someone had told me 10 years ago when I first started on this route of changing what I choose to eat, if they would have said, you're going to love what you eat once you, adapt and you get used to it, I'd have told them, you're nuts. There's no way. I love what I'm eating now, and I really don't want to do this. But I'm telling you, I have not touched an animal product really for almost 10 years now, and I love what I'm eating. I'm healthy. I'm not taking any pills. And that's what we want for you. We want you to have health. We don't want you to take any pills. We want you to have an ideal body weight, which will come naturally for those of you who chose to do this. But we also realize that there are barriers in your life. The family barriers, for those of you who are new to this, are not going to be particularly supportive. It's sort of doing something different from what they're used to. And how do you get together with family gatherings and have Thanksgiving dinner if you're not, if you believe that turkey is not a health food? Do you want to eat something that's not healthy for one day of your life? You may make the decision that that's what's important to you. You may also come to a conclusion, as we have, that what's important is the interaction of family, and that you'll bring foods that everyone can eat or whatever it is, and you'll socialize, and that's the benefit of those holidays. It's not necessarily the traditional foods that your grandmother made or your mother made, but that's a decision that you get to make, and you can choose to do what you want.
That's great. Thank you very much, both of you.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts from anybody?
Next week, we're doing plant-based diets for pediatrics and families with Dr. Colgrove. He's a pediatrician at Oregon Medical Group. He's part of the Eugene Plant-Based Providers and a part of these classes as well. So tune in for next week.
We're looking forward to it, Eric. And one of these days, we're going to have one of the medical students like Megan or Lisa, maybe give a presentation sometime in the future if they're interested in doing that. We like to encourage them along because they have the potential of passing this information along to a whole bunch of people, along with their families and friends.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you back for more. And we hope it's not punishment. We hope it's interesting and engaging for you, even though it may shake your foundation a little bit. You say, well, I don't know. I like what I'm eating and I don't want to give up this and that. Try not to think of this as giving up anything. Try to think of this as reaching for health, reaching for the goal that you want or goals in your life. And how are you going to achieve them? Not you're giving up anything. I'm studying, learning about the science to try to really make healthy decisions because, the reality is we really have probably not given it much thought as to what actually healthy food choices are. We've just been eating what we like because we've been eating it all these years. And, we like that salt, sugar, and fat. All right, Scott, any last parting words?
No, just come back next week and just stick with us for a while and go back and watch some of the archive classes. If you're feeling a little bit, lost with any of this, just go back to the beginning and start watching and you'll get caught up if you have the time to plug away at it. We talk about, this is it's like learning to speak a new language, learning to play a musical instrument. It just takes practice, repetition, and it's not going to be something that's overnight. This is the first day of the rest of your life, and just try to make the changes that you're ready to make it when you're ready to make them.
Okay.
All right.
Take
night,
care,
everybody,
everybody.
then.
Till the next time.
Good night.
Night.